Brandon's world split apart the moment his mother looked him straight in the eye and told him, "If you don't divorce Julia, then from this moment you are not my son." No hesitation, no tears, just cold steel. Would you walk out on your family for love? Or would you abandon the person who crossed borders and oceans for you? Hold that thought, because nobody, not Brandon, not Julia, not the millions glued to TLC on Sunday nights, saw what happened next. The fallout was so big, it rippled through the entire 90-day Fiancé fandom, sending shockwaves through living rooms on both sides of the Atlantic. Remember last time, when Julia had to grin and bear farm chores while Betty micromanaged every second, treating her less like family and more like a trespasser with muddy shoes? Viewers watched those small, icy exchanges over dinner and guessed the powder keg was about to blow. But let's be real, nobody expected the family to detonate itself this spectacularly. Back then, it looked like a case of awkward wedge driving, maybe a tearful therapy session, and some off-camera awkwardness. Instead, Betty stomped through everyone's boundaries, threw down a nuclear ultimatum, and flipped her own son's whole life upside down. All at once. It wasn't reality TV anymore. It was real, raw heartbreak, no pause button, no refunds. As the stakes rose, so did the secrets. Behind the drama cut and pasted for TV, the family was bracing for a war that couldn't stay hidden much longer. Money was on the line, the farm, the property, and yes, all the years spent investing in a future that now hung by a thread. Fans started asking, is Brandon really prepared to torch every bridge behind him? Was Julia ready to be cast out, cut off, blamed for chaos she didn't start? The noises on social media grew louder, not kinder, as hints of financial motives and loyalty tests leaked into every Reddit thread. Betty's iron grip on her son had always fit snug, too snug for comfort, some would say. Julia felt it. You could see it in her tired eyes. Every boundary she set for a shred of privacy got spun into a rebellion, a power struggle, a reason to double down. No one ever walked away from an episode of Brandon and Julia thinking, oh, this couple talks things out over herbal tea. Nope, it was silent standoffs, stress bubbling just under the surface, each confrontation sharper than the last. Now the question wasn't just who wins the fight. It became who survives it with their sanity. Nobody saw the next part coming. With the shadow of legal threats, the risk that Julia could lose everything, her marriage, her place in the only home she had, and a social spotlight hotter than ever, the couple did something no one expected. You want drama? Try selling your entire life, your home, your memories, packing every leftover hope into a suitcase, and facing the world with nothing but each other. That's what Brandon and Julia did, and the impact wasn't just personal, it rocked their whole fan base. If Julia left, would there even be a place for her to come back to? What do you do when your only choices are heartbreak or exile? Every move now carried the weight of a million eyes, plus the certainty that any misstep would be dissected by strangers ready to blame anybody but themselves. A jaw-dropping reveal is just around the corner. Viewers wondered who would blink first. Brandon had always struggled between wanting family approval and wanting a life of his own, while Julia came across strong, but under all the snark and sulkiness, the loneliness showed. Nobody gets married to end up a chess piece in someone else's game, yet that's exactly how they both landed, each move more desperate, less calculated, more about survival without losing what little love was left. Will Betty soften or snap? Does money buy freedom or trap you in new ways? Will Julia's own mistakes come back to haunt her the second she sets foot alone somewhere new, miles from anyone who cares? Viewers held their breath, watching the dominoes fall. Backroom whispers turned to public confrontations, family ties twisted and snapped, and all along, behind the petty social snipes, you got the sense the real price wasn't dollars or screen time, it was the right to choose your happiness, with the risk that maybe the final choice leaves nobody a winner. What happened when Brandon and Julia ran for the exit shocked even the most jaded fans. Picture the weight on Brandon's shoulders the moment the door slammed, and everyone went silent. Torn between a mother who'd always treated him as precious property and a wife begging for her own dignity, he looked exhausted. Not tired from chores or filming, but hollowed out by years of being everyone's emotional football. Half the audience wanted to shake him and shout, "Stand up for your wife." The other half muttered, "If your parents are this controlling, maybe walking away is the only answer." Even his attempt to keep the peace came off as weak, like patching a sinking boat with bubble gum. Yet every time Brandon tried to please both sides, it only sparked more chaos. Julia's world looked just as lonely but colder. She'd uprooted her life, left behind everything familiar for this American dream that now looked less like love and more like exile. She was isolated in a foreign country, cut off not only by language and culture, but by the razor wire her in-laws strung around every moment. Julia's feisty comebacks read as defiance, but it was a smokescreen for being outnumbered, constantly judged, always at the bottom of the pecking order. Some fans sided with her out of pure pity, imagining themselves in her shoes, surrounded by faces that never soften, not even at dinner. Every meal a test. Betty played her part with a dedication that bordered on relentless. Years of being the household queen bee were threatened the minute Julia arrived. Every house rule doubled as a power play. Every concern disguised a challenge. Who do you love more? The family legacy or this wife? The farm that stood for generations or the new life you promised on TV? Betty's control came dressed up as love, but with enough guilt to leave bruises you couldn't see. It started with chores and curfews, but those lines blurred the minute a wedding ring entered the picture. This tension didn't explode out of nowhere. You could see the cracks forming in every episode. Old-school parents clashing with a culture of quick romance and big risks. Julia's dream for independence kept slamming into family duty and walls that wouldn't budge. Add cameras, contracts, and the constant hum of social gossip, and suddenly every argument had 10 extra layers. When you see someone selling their whole life's work, you have to wonder, did they choose it, or were they pushed? Some nights, the smallest thing would trigger a blow-up. A missing ingredient in the kitchen. A comment about chores. Careful glances across the kitchen, one too many times, each moment a fuse. Fans speculated, are these two ever going to break free, or would Brandon always carry the guilt of betraying one woman by loving the other? Julia, for her part, started picking her battles, but losing more than she ever said out loud. Even when she tried to help, the suspicion never left Betty's eyes. Wait till you see how the next move triggered total fallout. And let's not even talk about the money. When you wrap up decades of family savings, sweat, and sacrifice into one property and then put a for sale sign on it, people stop whispering and start shouting. Friends wondered if this was a rescue or a free fall. Hometown gossip churned up new rumors every day. Was Julia after the payday? Was Brandon truly ready for the fallout? Or did he even understand what cutting ties meant? Social media went wild with blame, making memes out of awkward silences and farming mishaps, but the stakes were so much grimmer than what any viral TikTok could catch. Here's what nobody tells you. When you choose sides, you lose more than sleep. Brandon risked his inheritance, the land his dad left him, the legacy every farm kid is supposed to protect. Julia risked deportation and disgrace, being cast forever as the villain wife by people who never cared about her story. And with every ugly comment online, every sly dig on an Instagram post, you saw the walls closing in. All the reality show glitz in the world couldn't mask the fact that two people were fighting for air, while everyone around them seemed happy to watch them drown. What would you do, honestly, if you were trapped between blood and vows, history and hope? Could you pick a side if both choices meant losing a part of yourself? As the property deal raced ahead and rumors started to swirl, even the most loyal fans began to question if there was any way out that didn't end with someone shattered. But then, just as it looked like things would freeze in a cold standoff, the silence broke. And nobody was prepared for how hard the fallout would hit. The moment Brandon and Julia signed those papers, turning years of sweat and family history into a stack of cashier's checks, the entire community felt it. One side of town whispered, "How dare he walk away from everything his family built?" The other side shook their heads. Finally, the poor guy stood up for himself. It was more than a real estate sale. That house held every birthday, every regret, every argument echoing in those empty halls. The farm, once a promise, felt haunted now, abandoned by love gone wrong. As the moving truck pulled up, the air buzzed with a kind of judgment that felt colder than January in Virginia. If you listen close, the family feud thundered long after the check cleared. Old neighbors gossiped at grocery stores, piecing together a story complete with villains and martyrs. Some said Julia broke up a family, that she turned Brandon into a stranger. Others pointed to Betty's power trips, claiming no woman could have survived that kind of scrutiny forever. Even the real estate agent looked nervous, double-checking the sale price, as if someone would come screaming down the road demanding it all back. Meanwhile, online, the blast zone spread 10 times faster. Instagram and Facebook lit up like fireworks. On Reddit, threads exploded. One camp unloading on Julia for killing the American farm dream, another defending her, posting clips of Betty's micromanagement. Twitter memes flew, with Betty photoshopped as Game of Thrones Cersei and Julia with a suitcase emoji parade. A few influencers broke it down frame by frame, asking followers to pick their side with fire emojis and shots of the farm for dramatic effect. For a week it was impossible to scroll anywhere without tripping over some opinion or pop culture reference. Was this just the new Sister Wives? Did TLC finally push a cast too far? There were fans who dragged TLC into the mud, blaming the network's endless poking of family wounds for driving the story off a cliff. Others blamed the couple themselves. Why air your mess for cash, then act surprised when people judge? Some said, everybody has a breaking point. When is enough really enough? Isn't family supposed to come first? Or is that only true until it chokes you? There's a shock waiting in the fans' reactions that flips it all. You couldn't ignore how sharp the reactions got. Even Brandon's loyal fans, the ones who thought he'd always toe the family line, called him out for betraying his roots. Julia's support network felt more like a pressure cooker than a hug. People speculated about hidden motives, money grabs, and secret deals. Influencers posted split-screen reaction videos, debating if peace is ever worth setting fire to your past. The comments filled up. Would you sell your soul for freedom? What if the price was your whole history? And honestly, who hasn't groaned on a Sunday at seeing another partner versus parents' headache go nowhere on reality TV? As the dust settled, Betty doubled down, airing her version on Facebook with cryptic Bible quotes and not-so-veiled jabs at outsiders. Cousins who never appeared on camera started subtweeting about betrayal and loyalty. The extended family split into factions, some defending tradition, others blasting the older generation for refusing to let their kid grow up. Even gossip accounts, usually too busy tracking Hollywood breakups, jumped in with, "Is this the most controversial TLC exit ever?" Everyone had an opinion, and every opinion came with a punch. But here's where it stings. When you step out, you lose the protection of familiar routines. Julia's Instagram blew up the day she posted her airport selfie, announcing to hundreds of thousands that they were leaving forever, not just TLC, not just the US, but the battle entirely. Some fans wrote paragraphs of heartbreak, crushed they'd never see the couple's story continue. Others cheered and said, "Life's too short for old grudges. Go get your peace." There's a shock waiting in the fans' reactions that flips it all. Mixed into the sadness were the hard, practical questions. Is a suitcase full of cash worth losing every safety net? When the cameras go dark, does the world move on, or does the void follow you? TLC's response only made things murkier, dropping promo spots, hinting at new faces, firing warning shots at anyone thinking of speaking out of turn. Some viewers compare the exit to past reality brawls like Christine's walk-off from Sister Wives, saying this time felt uglier, like everyone lost something for good. By now, it wasn't about loyalty or love, but about survival. Every episode after played out like a warning. Would Julia's new business hold up if fans were still split right down the middle? Could Brandon find himself without a family, a show, or even a sense of who he was? Was selling up a clean slate, or did it just leave more ghosts behind? Each new fan theory built on the last. Was Betty going to take them to court? Would Julia expose more secrets? Or would both fade into reality TV history quietly? The wildest part is Julia's move to pack up, walk out, and cut ties sent ripples far past TLC. It hit marriage debates, parenting forums, even talk shows itching for a fresh take. No matter what side you land on, one thing stuck. Is freedom worth every bridge burned behind you? Did they lose the war to finally win a little peace? Or did cash out mean leaving their real selves at baggage claim? All these questions circled, waiting for an answer. And right when fans thought the dust might finally settle, a fresh wave of drama lurked on the horizon, hinting that the reckoning for all those burned bridges wasn't nearly finished. Packing up a whole life in boxes always looks ordinary until you feel what's missing. Every step through the house, each empty room, Brandon and Julia felt the cost, not in dollars, but in memories they couldn't carry. The kitchen sounded too quiet, no clatter, no nagging, just echoes. The couch where awkward, public apologies were rehearsed now sat empty. Even the bedroom, once their only private space, felt like a backdrop for unfinished arguments and tired dreams. For Brandon, each box taped shut was years of labor slipping away. For Julia, every photo coming down from a wall reminded her how many times she smiled just to make it through another day. Neither dared say aloud what they'd both been thinking. Once that door closes, nothing is left but each other. The moving truck rolled in before dawn. Brandon was already awake, staring out a window, trying to remember when his home stopped feeling safe. He didn't bother with a goodbye to his family. Julia stood by, keeping busy to fight the nerves crawling up her back. She ran her hands over suitcase zippers like good luck charms, but her face told the story, relief tangled with sadness. You spend months fighting for a place at the table, then suddenly you're too tired even to sit. They left a lot of stuff behind, not just plates and shoes, but old family recipes, mementos of birthdays, poker night grins from before the cameras. You could see it hit Brandon, the ache sharp as a splinter. Everyone pictures leaving as a sprint out the front door. For them, it was a slow walk along a creaky hallway, every floorboard remembering a time when fights weren't so final and love wasn't in short supply. They tried not to look at the empty hooks where keys used to hang, or at the dusty books Julia never got to read in peace. Brandon lingered on the porch, key in hand, not ready to lock away his last connection to the only life he knew. Julia waited a full minute before nudging him out. Their silence felt louder than any shouting match. Both of them knew, once you pick exile, there's no second chance to go home. They left without any dramatic speeches or weepy goodbyes. Nobody waved from a window, no family waiting in the driveway for one last hug. The farm was as silent as a secret, but the online world was about to get louder than ever. Because on the way to the airport, when Julia pulled out her phone, the impact hit harder than any suitcase ever could. She opened Instagram and didn't hold back. No cryptic captions, no staged photos. She told the whole 90-day world goodbye. Full stop, no rewrites. The fans went wild. TLC's PR team scrambled behind the scenes, not believing their two biggest drama magnets had blown up their own story before anyone could spin it. TLC had hoped to keep things tidy, maybe lure them back with extra cash or a fresh spin-off. If you've been paying attention, you remember the network's playbook. Producers dangle another contract, a reunion, sometimes even forgiveness for breaking a non-disclosure. Julia and Brandon weren't biting. New offers came with bigger checks, but she posted her own receipts right there to the world. Nothing was for sale. If you watched the likes and comments, you could see the civil war splitting the fandom in hours. Don't look away now. The next confession rips everything open. Julia's timeline flooded with both love and outrage. Some fans cheered, tired of seeing her cast as the forever outsider, willing her to chase peace over pain. Others accused her of milking the drama for more social clout, or running out on Brandon's roots for a Paris fantasy nobody bought. And all the while, deeper online, Whisper Networks churned over her latest business experiment. OnlyFans subscribers, side hustles, and Kingdom for Dogs boxes. The same followers who'd spent years defending her choices now called her moves desperate. Some criticized, some supported. A few tried to dissect her marriage like it was just another reality subplot. More than one reply said it outright. If she was so done with America, why was she still posting for American dollars? Brandon got caught in the crossfire too. People wondered aloud if he really stood by Julia's business, or if he was just too tired to fight anymore. Jealousy rumors swirled after a confession came out on air. Julia had kissed an ex years ago and waited until therapy cameras were rolling to admit it. Was it cheating? Was it just old pain finally surfacing? Brandon's face, that moment, said everything. Not rage, but a deep, raw sense of betrayal that didn't fade when the credits rolled. The couple's trust, already nicked by years of secrets and stress, now dangled by a thread. Fans wondered if a move across the ocean could fix trust broken this badly, or if Julia was carving exit plans by starting business moves Brandon didn't want to see. Online, the reaction veered from sympathy to salt. Some 90-Day Fiancé alums piled on, sharing their own stories of cashing out or crashing hard after fame faded. The larger audience started betting on how soon the marriage would crumble under the weight of too many secrets and too much side hustle. A few diehards declared it true love, that the pair had finally escaped the TLC machine to write a real story. Others saw every OnlyFans post or business launch as proof it was all about money, not peace. If you think fans are passive, you haven't seen how fast they can turn once their favorites seem to sell out or hide behind victim status one too many times. Don't look away now. The next confession rips everything open. Julia's honesty about her kiss, aired right alongside all the old marital wounds, complicated every hot take. Was it bravery to admit it on camera, or was she just looking for a way out without having to make the final call? Every viewer seemed to take a side. Some said Brandon deserved better, that Julia's only consistent move was spinning new side hustles each time things got bad. Others said she was unfairly trapped, scapegoated even now, forced to bear the blame for a fight that needed at least two people to get so bad. The worst critics called her a manipulator. Some even suggested her latest choices were passive-aggressive playbook, hoping Brandon would finally crack and file for divorce on his own. The truth, as usual, looked messier than Instagram admits. Both Brandon and Julia had crossed lines, some forgivable, some probably not. Their final days in that house circled around old hurts and new ones. Brandon's loyalty always tested, Julia's trust always half-given, the pressure of a public who loved them one week and dragged them the next. Even before the plane took off, their marriage was built on the ruins of so many second chances, the walls packed tighter with regret than with any leftover furniture. And as their social channels kept buzzing, the line between healing and performance blurred by the hour. TLC, for its part, wasn't about to fold quietly. Contracts threatened, future cameos waved like bait, and legal whispers rattled through the grapevine, but the couple kept walking. Each new post from Julia, whether it was OnlyFans, dog boxes, or a selfie clutching tickets in a Paris train station, set off new rounds of outrage, admiration, and pure voyeur curiosity. Everything about their exit was both messy and spellbinding, harder to look away from with every new confession aired. Every critic wanted the last word, but few seemed brave enough to ask the real question: what will peace look like once you can never go home? Don't look away now. The next confession rips everything open. The price of freedom for Brandon and Julia wasn't a number in their bank account or a follower count on Instagram. It was the weight of knowing that, no matter how far they ran, their past was packed along for the ride. Paris might promise anonymity, but old wounds heal slow and new ones form fast when both love and loyalty are the sprittle. So, what comes next? Can you ever really outrun the life you left behind? Or are some breakups the kind you carry forever, stitched inside every fresh start? If you think their flight meant the end of the drama, get ready. Sometimes leaving everything behind is just the beginning, and the next confession waiting in the wings is about to show that some exits open bigger doors than anyone could predict. So, when the dust finally settled, the question that hung in the air was simple: had Brandon and Julia gained freedom, or traded one cage for another? They had walked out of Virginia's fields with money, enough to silence whispers about their future for a while. But if you listen closer, all the cash in the world couldn't buy a ticket back to who they used to be. No matter how many suitcases rolled behind them, They left a version of themselves, the daughter trying to fit in, the son caught in the middle, locked in a house that now belonged to strangers. All that remained was a marriage, and for the first time, nobody could tell if that would be enough. The emotional balance sheet ran red before their plane ever landed in Paris. Brandon lost the ground beneath his feet, the anchor of family and tradition that raised him. If he tried to convince himself this was a fair trade, the silence in every holiday and milestone would answer back. Julia lost an entire audience willing to believe her story, the comfort of being seen, even as an outsider, in a place she tried so hard to call home. Both now stood at a distance from everything that had once mattered, not just by miles, but by the choices that couldn't be reversed. For all the fanfare about new beginnings, the reality hit slower than jet lag. No producers yelled for reshoots. No relatives peeked in from the kitchen, waiting to pounce. Paris offered anonymity, cafes where nobody asked for autographs, streets where a selfie stayed private, and not a single English-speaking neighbor cared who followed whom. This was the clean slate thousands imagined for them. But the quiet had an edge. There were no more distractions, just the truth. The old conflicts still traveled in every glance, each sigh, each awkward meal eaten with no one to impress. Behind closed doors, real healing isn't simple. Brandon and Julia stared at one another, the city humming outside, and tried to build something real from all those fake TV moments. Did they have anything left in common outside the shadow of Betty's demands or TLC's contracts? Was this survival, love, or the last stage of a story they'd already outgrown? For every laugh they found together now, a dozen old arguments hovered between them, unsolved. The money felt different too. Gone was the farm, the constant reminder of battles lost and won, and in its place came a kind of nervous freedom. Some days the sense of possibility was intoxicating. They strolled along the Seine, shared cheap wine, and played tourist in a life no one had written for them. But other days, the absence of structure pressed in. No show, no network deadlines, no future mapped out by ratings or contracts. Suddenly, every choice belonged to them, and it became clear that peace outside is no guarantee of peace inside. They now faced every uncomfortable truth, without an audience to cheer or boo. The online world, though, never quite let go. Julia's posts found their way across the Atlantic, picking up warmth and backlash in equal measure. Every business move, every new idea, got dissected by voices she'd never meet in real life. Some fans clung to the hope of a reunion. Others insisted the split was proof they'd made a mistake. Even in Paris, anonymity only went so far because you take your reputation along for the ride, too. Brandon sometimes wondered if all the sacrifices meant he'd really escaped the grip of the past. Long walks down foreign streets made it easier to pretend he could start over, but memory worked its way in through quiet moments. He'd scroll through old photos when Julia wasn't looking, linger on pictures of home, the farm, even the dust and chaos of family life. Julia, forever branded both as the rebel and the scapegoat, now lived with an ache that rarely let up. She cooked Russian food in their tiny kitchen, searching for a taste that felt like belonging. For all the jokes about Paris being romantic, there's little that softens the loneliness of starting over far from anyone who understands your story. Yet the biggest shift was how the rest of the world changed without them. Fans found new obsessions, TLC shined the spotlight on new faces, and even Betty channeled her anger into cryptic social posts, hinting about loyalty and betrayal. Sometimes the pain of being replaced hurt, as much as fighting to stay. And yet, in their small apartment, Brandon and Julia faced the one question that the show never really allowed. If nobody is watching, who are we actually fighting for? Their relationship, battered by cameras, family, and money, came down to this. With nothing left to lose except each other. Was it enough?
Some days it was.
Most days it wasn't clear. The bond that survived the storm back home looked fragile in the soft light of Paris, shifting between old comfort and new discomfort. Sometimes Julia's laughter sounded like freedom, other times, it sounded like someone still trying to convince herself she'd made the right choice. Looking back at it now, what they gained can't be measured by the price of the farm or the size of the payout. They won the right to name their own battles, lost the approval of almost everyone they once relied on, and emerged not entirely healed but painfully honest. Brandon left being the good son. Julia left playing the role of relentless fighter. They now were simply two people with their scars in full view, alone together on a different continent. People always think the biggest drama is on reality TV. But after the lights cut out and the contracts are shredded, most find the real fight is the one that never airs, the one with their own regrets, forgiveness, and hopes they're scared to name. Some escape the cameras, but the biggest drama's inside their heads, looping day and night. Both would say they chose peace over performance, yet even they know no ending is ever so simple. So if you imagine this is where the story rests, remember how fast life changes in this universe. While Brandon and Julia sip coffee under gray Parisian skies, the next headline is already forming, and the next scandal is warming up just out of frame. Old secrets, new faces, and another cast member ready to risk it all for fame or love. And if you think this was the end of their drama, wait till the next scandal with a brand new cast member brings old secrets roaring back. You're not going to believe what's coming next.